Hello, and welcome to the review of Chainsaw Man Chapter 97, titled I Love Chainsaw. And considering that this is the final chapter of Part 1 of Chainsaw Man, I have to say that it has done a marvelous job of showing us just how far Denji has come as a character, and as a person. But we can talk more on that later after we have gone through the chapter. For now, let's get started on the actual review. The chapter starts off with a color page, showing Denji eating an assortment of meat-based meals. Meals that we know are made from the parts of Makima's body. Doesn't that just make you stop for a second and realize that if you died there is so many ways you could end up being cooked? No, just me? Well, okay then, moving on. I'm surprised at just how broad Denji's cooking skills are, considering that he had been living off scraps for most of his life and hasn't exactly had time to take cooking lessons since he became a devil hunter. After the color page, we transition into seeing Denji walking Makima's dogs, while Power's cat, also wearing a collar and leash, sits on his shoulder. He is going to meet up with Kishibe. I'm honestly surprised that he just up and left Denji to deal with Makima's remains on his own. After all, if his plan hadn't worked then surely he would have been on Makima's hit list. But I guess he figured that even if had stayed he wouldn't have been much help against her, which would probably have been true, but even still, he could have stayed for moral support. How long is supposed to have passed anyway? Denji tells Kishibe, as he sits down, that he ate all of Makima, saying that she didn't revive from his stomach or his excrement, so it had to have been at least a couple of days, I'd guess. Which to me means, while people were still getting sacrificed because Makima was still trying to revive, Denji went to her home, collected her dogs and started taking them for walks. Damn. Denji doesn't give a crap about the people dying, because he won't expedite the process. Anyway, as Denji is sitting down, Power's cat moves over to sit on Kishibe's shoulder, nuzzling his cheek, and that might be the single cutest moment we will ever get with Kishibe, as he quickly removed the poor thing and holds it out in front of him. As children gather round the two of them, wanting to stroke the dogs, who are admittedly very cute looking, Kishibe questions how he managed to damage Makima when no other attacks seemed to work on her, or get past her defenses. And here we get a sort of explanation on how it is Denji was able to sneak up on Makima and hide among her followers so easily. Denji explains that, despite everything, he didn't want to actually hurt Makima. He ate her, to become one with her, which in his mind isn't an attack but rather love. That is one of the most messed up forms of love that I think I've heard of from someone who isn't obviously a yandere. Eating someone, because you love them. Well, I guess all things considered, from how Denji was raised to his life before and after Makima, him having a warped, by most people's perception, idea of love makes sense to him at the beginning of the series, and probably even now. Food is one of the most important things to him. Good food is one of those things he dreamed of having when he was in dead hell. Food is one of the things which, despite everything he has gone through, has been a constant means of enjoyment, even food of the cheapest quality. So it's not hard to see, when looked at from his position, in the world that he is living in, why consuming someone you love wouldn't be an act of hatred, betrayal or disgust, but rather proving your affection to someone else. If anything, rather than being a display of depravity, this is a display of Denji's utterly alien worldview. And if I can use a Fate reference for a moment, Denji would definitely have a reality marble. But Kishibe, he doesn't seem to buy that, and instead suggests that it's more likely that the plan worked because of the specifics in Makima's contract or because of a different matter in perception. All that aside, however, what he is really interested in is what I assume all wanted to know: how did Denji manage to sneak in amongst all of Makima's followers unnoticed? Given the powers that she wielded, not to mention probably years more experience, it doesn't seem like it should have been possible for him to get the drop on her, and I would agree, but according to Denji, he had a hunch based on all the information they had on the enemy, and the talks they had, which makes me wonder, does he mean talks with Makima or talks with Kishibe? Because if he means the latter, then that means that the whole plan of his wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment thing that he came up with and decided to just go with, but rather he and Kishibe and perhaps Kobani, had some kind of discussion about. If he means the conversations he had with Makima, then Denji might be a lot more observant than people give him credit for, seeing as he picked up something no one else did about Makima just from talking with her. He is just a bit slow in putting it all together. His hunch was that Makima doesn't recognize people by their face or by their appearance, but rather by their scent. According to Denji, she only recognizes the scent of people who she is interested in. Which, funnily enough, despite Pochita being a literal chainsaw dog, Denji being considered a dog by Makima, it is Makima herself who has one of the most dog-like traits out of all of them. I just find that kind of amusing, so I thought I'd point it out. Anyway, Denji says that he took a gamble, that the whole time Makima hadn't actually been looking at him but rather the Chainsaw Man, never seeing him from the start. That is actually kind of sad, spending so much time around someone, spending almost every day in fact around them, only to suddenly realize that despite that they don't even recognize you. And it's so much worse when you have been actively taking steps to get to know them and have been trying to gain their affection. To anyone who has ever had a crush in school, or at work, or wherever, but when the time came for you to confess your feelings, that person didn't even think of you as a close friend, imagine that pain and increase it about 100-fold, and you'll probably understand Denji's own suffering, having to admit that Makima never even recognized him as a person of value. But moving on from that depressing moment, the children who were playing with the dogs decide to run off, leaving one of them behind. Denji tries to shoo her away with his hand, saying that they are having a top-secret conversation here. Honestly, if you were worried about privacy, you shouldn't be having this conversation in the middle of a public place like this. However, it doesn't look like that is going to matter much, as the young girl latches onto his index finger and comping down on it, which causes Denji to have an internal flashback to Makima. Yes, this young girl, who honestly when I first saw her made me think it was Rize, is actually the new Control Devil. Apparently she was discovered in China, and Kishibe just up and decided to nick her from there. Alright, now this just rips open a whole new bag of questions. How long has this new Control Devil been around? How was she discovered? How did Kishibe manage to just up and nick her? If Makima died on Earth, shouldn't the Control Devil have appeared in Hell? Does that mean the Control Devil died in Hell and came back to Earth? Is a humanoid shape the true form of the Control Devil, or is it inhabiting a corpse? So many questions that we aren't going to get answers to, probably for a while, if ever. But, for now, let's just be happy that Makima is actually gone, at least for now. Since apparently, this girl has none of Makima's memories. Kishibe says that, if they left her with the government, she would probably grow up to be just like Makima, with Denji saying he doesn't want to eat any more meat for a long time. Apparently, Kishibe intends to leave this girl in Denji's care, because he is about to get very busy. Busy with what? Who knows, and apparently despite having almost no knowledge on what good parenting actually is, leaving her with him is the best course of action. As Denji and the Control Devil stare at one another, Denji becoming more and more uneasy while she remains painfully neutral up until she points at him saying doggy. I wonder, if like Makima she can smell Pochita on him? Does Pochita actually smell like a dog? It would explain why this girl is calling him a doggy. Denji, seemingly having grown exhausted in a matter of seconds, turns his head to Kishibe, telling him there is no way he can do this, only to find that the man has up and left him, vanishing without a trace. As Denji has a momentary freak out, he turns awkwardly to the girl, who at that very moment was laid out on the back of one of the dogs. Denji, at this point, is clearly not certain what to do, which is understandable. He isn't exactly an adult himself, and trying to raise a kid is a lot of work, probably even more so if they are actually a super powerful devil. But he manages to pluck up the nerve to ask the girl what her name is, to which she responds that her name is Nayuta. As Denji looks at her, resigning himself to the fact that he can't get rid of her, he asks if there is anything she wants to eat, which isn't meat. To which Nayuta responds with sliced bread, to which Denji responds that she is a pretty inexpensive devil to keep around, with her giving him a peace sign. In this single moment, in just this one page, we see how much Denji has changed as a character from the beginning of the story till now. Back when he would have praised a slice of bread, like it was some holy text sent down by God, now he is saying that it's inexpensive, cheap even. To me, this means more than just Denji having grown an appreciation for more extravagant meals. To me, this is a showing of how Denji has found more in his life that is worth living for than just food. Back at the beginning of this series, he didn't have the luxury of believing that he could have even the most basic of things. He dreamed of having simple things which most of us take for granted. His goals were simple, little things, because he either wasn't aware of the multitude of things out there for him to experience, or because he never believed he could experience them. But now, after experiencing everything he has, from eating good food, to experiencing friendships, loss and everything else, a slice of bread is just something he takes for granted now. Denji has attained a life which is closer to that of a regular person. He has become, in a sense, more like a normal human being. Someone who doesn't value a slice of bread more than they value their eye or their entire well-being. Just seeing him go from accepting that even vomit can be a good source of food to actually respecting himself enough to feel like he deserves to eat good meals, which honestly should be a basic human right. I'm just glad to see that he is respecting himself more, and now he has the chance to try and give someone else that kind of life, even if he is completely unprepared for that undertaking. So, Denji heads home with his newly acquired daughter? Roommate? What exactly do you call this relationship? Guardianship perhaps? Yeah, let's go with that. Denji is now her guardian. So they head back to his apartment, with Nayuta riding on his back. We get to see scenes of the two of them eating sliced bread together, with all the dogs gathered around them in the cramped apartment before going to sleep. Denji laid out on the floor, using one of the dogs as a pillow while Nayuta uses the futon. You know, Kishibe, if you were going to dump this girl on Denji, the least you could have done is make sure his apartment is set up for the two of them. That is kind of a dick move, but I guess Kishibe is the sort who just doesn't think about things like that, seeing as how he was quite okay with his safe house being a room full of boxes, a single chair and a small TV. Anyway, as Denji is drifting off to sleep, we get a transition to what looks to be a sort of dream with a young Denji hugging Pochita, where we learn that Pochita's dream was to have some hug him. Something that the little chainsaw dog admits sounds simple, but because of his strength it was all but impossible. I don't know if that means because he killed people when he hugged them, or because people were too afraid of him to even try and hug him. But regardless, Denji fulfilled the little devil dog's dream, and now Pochita wants him to fulfill the control devil's dream. What dream could the devil who embodies the aspect of control have? Well, that's rather simple. The control devil dreams of giving up control and having equal relationships with others. But because it only knows how to make relationships through fear for whatever reason, we had to go through that whole thing with Makima. Apparently Makima wanted to make a world where everyone is equal, but went about it completely the wrong way. And now Denji has to try and make that world for her. And he is understandably uncertain of how to do that. Well, good thing Pochita knows the way. Just give her lots of hugs and we get a cute scene of the two of them hugging in their sleep, surrounded by the dogs. It's wholesome moments like this which really make the characters seem just that much more real. You can distance yourself from them when they're all covered in gore and performing feats of extreme violence, but when you see these tender moments, in their downtime, you can empathize if only slightly with these characters. And as the chapter comes to a close, we see a giant devil rampaging through whatever city that is. And as the people are running away, we hear the rumors that have been spread about Chainsaw Man, about how he might be human, how killing devils is his hobby, which instantly made me think of a certain Baldy who is a hero for fun, that he only saves girls, and how the Chainsaw Man is now a high school student. And as everyone is running away, we see Denji, in what looks to be a Japanese-style male school uniform, heading towards the giant devil, his shirt buttons undone so he can pull on his start cord, and then we get it. The words "End of Part 1, Public Safety Arc." Everything since the begin of the series, up until now has all been part of just one arc, one section of this absolutely amazing story which has already taken all of us on quite the journey and provided some of the most compelling and interesting character development I've seen in quite some time. If Chainsaw Man can keep up with its current quality in another year, I can say that this series will be one of the greats. It's mature, it's dark and it's gritty, but it also has some things to say about the importance of dreams, friendship and keep moving forwards, even when things feel completely hopeless. I can say, without a shadow of doubt, that Denji is one of my favorite protagonists in any series that I've personally read up to this point. Despite the horrific world he lives in and the fact that he himself is clearly supernatural, to me at least he still feels like someone who is relatable, someone that while I don't necessarily agree with some of the stuff he has done, said or felt, I can still understand where he is coming from. And Denji is only one part of this story. Everything from the supporting cast to the world building, to the themes explored here, everything is just top-notch. If I was to compare this series to anything, I'd have to compare it to Berserk. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're equal or anything like that, I'm just saying that out of all the series I've seen, Berserk is the only other manga that tackles such mature themes, in a similar way to this one, and gives off that vibe of, yeah, this is a super gore show, but at the same time it also has an emotional underbelly that is just waiting to be explored. But now what? Where do we go from here? Denji is apparently in high school now and is still working as a devil hunter. Well, if we are going to see Denji in a more normal setting, I use the term normal loosely here, then there is a whole boatload of other mature themes which can be explored here. Such as discrimination, how do Denji's classmates react to having someone who grew up on the streets and makes money as a devil hunter in their class? Sexuality, when surrounded by people probably not trying to kill him and may genuinely be attracted to him, how does Denji react given his past experiences? Growing up and trying to raise a child, while you yourself are still maturing as a person and finding your own way in the world. Whatever path we go down now, I'm sure it will be amazing. With all that said and done, have a good day or night, wherever you are. I've been the Anonymous Weeb and this has been my review of Chainsaw Man Chapter 97.